Welcome to another vintage fishing reel service video. In this episode we have a rare one. It's not that the Zebco model 802 is rare, but what makes this one rare is that this color, this brown version of the 802 was only made in 1981, and then I think after that they ended the 802 model. So I think this was the last. I'd have to double check, but I think it was the last in line of the 802 and the only one in brown. I'd have to double check that to make sure, but I know this color version was only made 1 year, 1981. So it looks like it might have a mechanical drag that's operated by the Star Drag, but we'll find out a little bit more when we get in there. It's definitely farm fresh and dirty and stuff, but we'll see what's going on in there. Woo! Got some little bit of extra merchandise for my money in there. A bunch of dirt. Maybe mud daubers or something, who knows? Or maybe it was sitting out in the rain. Okay. So the looks like we can just pull the rear cover up, but I'm going to hold on to the handle and hopefully back this. These things can get really tight on there, especially if there's like a lot of grit and stuff. Come on, there it came. Hope I didn't break anything. Boy, that was on there tight. Oh boy. Dual pickup pins, I like that. No cuts on the spinner head. But this, I'm a little bit worried about this spool. It looks a little corroded in there. We'll see what happens. The brake stop isn't bad, although it's coming up right there. But I think that can be glued, so I don't have to worry about getting an O-ring and replacing the brake stop. All right. How do we get the spool off of here? I'm guessing that's missing an E-clip. I'll have to check and see online whether there was also a washer there, but I should have had this drag turned down. You really should have the drag turned. Maybe it already is. Oh, it's stuck. You really should have this drag turned down before you I don't know what's going on there, before you pull the spool off, because the drag acts on the inside of the spool by pushing out these drag rings. Good Lord. But there's obviously needs to be some kind of clip to hold that spool on. All right. Well, we can take off the our line brake, and thankfully it has both of the little caps there. I was working on another Zebco that had this version of the brake stop, and the caps were missing. So come on. Yeah, and their spring. Okay, and then that will slide out. Better get this nasty line off the spool while we're thinking about it. There. All right. more dirt in there. That looks to be okay. Now we got to take off the handle here. Well, that wasn't on very tight. I like these handles, these torpedo shaped handle knobs. And then we've got a nut here. And I'm going to go all caveman with a pair of pliers on that because I'm too lazy to get out of socket. And then off comes the star drag adjuster, and there's a little rubber O-ring or washer there. We got to push down this little keeper thing here and pull out. I have no idea what happened to my good needle nose, but anyway, that'll work. So get that little E-clip off of there, and then we can pull off this little keeper thingy and the spring. And at that point, I think we should be able to pull out. Oh. We got the actuator arm there for the anti-reverse, and then we can pull out the pinion gear shaft and the pinion gear itself. And then what we want to do is take this drag, and we're not going to remove the spring or anything. We're just going to pull this out and let that hang. And at that point, I think we should be able to pull out our main gear assembly. So you've got the main gear, and then you have this gear that runs the drag from the star adjuster. And I think teardown is complete. So now we're ready to take these parts over to the sink, where we're going to end up taking and dissolving some of that grease with WD-40, scrubbing with a toothbrush, getting a cotton swab down through all the holes and journals and things, and then toothbrush and Dawn dishwashing soap as a final stage to get rid of any grease, oil, and WD-40 residue before we start putting it back together. So I'm going to go work on that, and I'll be back just like that. Okay, let's get all the parts out where you can see them and see what all's there. One thing I will point out is that I discovered when I got to the sink, there's a little plastic washer that goes, I think that, yeah, that goes on that shaft like that, I'm pretty sure, and rests up against the bottom of this little hat-shaped thing there. So don't lose that. So there's all the parts. All right, now on to reassembly. And the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little oil on the threads of the drag, and I'm going to put some oil around these anti-reverse switches and levers. You get those good and lubricated. And then we can start putting in the main gear. So I'm going to start with greasing the teeth of the main gear. And then I'm going to oil the main gear shaft. And then I'm going to reinstall the gear that runs the drag. and then oil that and push that back through into the housing. I can run my drag up and down and get that oil. There's probably some grit still in there. And you can put some grease on the larger gear. It's not going to do you much good to put it on that thin, big gear. But you can put some grease in the teeth of that larger drag gear. And it's working good now. All right. So now we can reinstall the axle shaft. And so we're going to oil that. I'll get back in there. And we're going to put on the pinion gear. Which is keyed, so it's kind of D-shaped. And then we've got our little plastic washer that's got to go over the top of that. This is where tweezers or forceps can come in handy. There's a difference between these two caps. One of them is sunken in and the other one's flat, and the flat one goes on the bottom. So at any rate, let's get that lever on there. Stay where you're supposed to. Yeah, so this one that has the flat bottom goes on first, then your spring, and then the one with the cupped top to it goes on next. And then that E-clip. And then that E-clip rests down inside that cup. So now we've got to line up these slots on the back side. And there's two different size slots. You want the widest slots lined up over this, good God, lined up over that hole. Like, you see those slots there? The wider ones. And then you want to get this back into that hole. Something ain't quite right here. Here we go. And get that post to go up in between like that, so that now when you turn the drag, it's going to pull on that's going to pull on this, and it's going to cause that flattened post in there to go like that, and it's going to spread those drag rings out into the inside of the spool, and that's what creates your drag. It's pretty cool. I like these kind of drags. All right, so now I think we can go ahead and reinstall. Well, we've got some repairs to do here yet on this drag or line stop. You see, that's probably, I don't know if that's that's probably a faulty cleavage there on that rubber piece. So I'm just going to get some glue and glue that flat back down. So I just put some goop on it, and I got that flat glued back down where I don't even see where it was now, but it's fixed now. So now we can take that and slink those two posts into the two holes and get our springs over those. And our little keepers have a rim around it, except for on one spot. You want to keep that non-rimmed edge towards the axle shaft and push down and get that on that one. And then this one, same way, the non-rimmed edge faces towards the axle shaft. And lock those into place. Alright, have I greased everything in there? Greased and oiled. Let's make sure this is turning all right. Reasonably so. It'll come around once we get it all together. All right, now we can take and put this back into, well, you could probably just go ahead and throw the handle on now. So we've got our rubber O-ring type washer. We got the starter drag adjuster first, and that's keyed, so it'll fit on there like that. And then we had that nut, which is going to be probably a pain to get on there without cross-threading, but it looks like it went on okay. So that allows us to turn our drag independently of the main gear. That's working nice and smoothly now. So now, put our handle on and our nut. Get that on tight, you don't want to lose that. Little acorn nut. Something's not quite right. Got too much lash between the, something missing in there. There's way too much lash between, I mean, look at the gap between the main gear and the, if you pull the handle out, you get no whining. Only when you push it in. Definitely need some kind of a shim in there. Okay, I got this all tore back apart again. I did some thinking and figuring, and the only thing I can see that would work, it's not so much about the washers and things on the drag gear or the handles. It is about getting some space between this main gear and the drag gear. And so I've got a couple of small washers here, and I'm going to try to use that to shim it out, and just hopefully that's not too thick. Yeah, that's going to tell us right there if it's too thick. And at this point, it does appear to be that washer's too thick, because it's, the pinion gear isn't sliding down far enough. Let's try this washer, which does appear to be a little bit thinner. That might be just what will do it. We'll find out here. That's going to do it. Well, it turns out I found in the bottom of the sink this little brass washer here. And I'm guessing that's the missing washer that I had to replace with something out of my parts box. And if it is, that underlines the fact that I need to be more careful when it comes to checking for washers and things before I go to the sink. So that, I'm going to slip that on there Here's the replacement washer that I just found out of a junk box. And we're going to put this together and see if that ends up solving the problem. I suspect that's where that washer came from. Now, let's see if that works. And it does. So, yeah, I need to be a little more careful about checking parts for shim washers before I go to the sink. But, so it was not missing a part after all, and I didn't need my little hack job repair. So now we can start getting this thing back together properly. It's working great. So now we're ready to put that on, and before I forget, let's drop a little oil down in the handle knob, work that in, get our, well, we should grease around the spindle here, and this up here, reduce wear. Of course, those are brass, so those aren't going to wear out too bad, the pickup pin arms. And what I'm not going to be able, there's our clicker. What I'm not going to be able to do is fully complete this reel until I get an E or a C clip for that, to keep that spool on. But okay, so I went to the hardware store and got an E clip that I hope will fit. I didn't want to install it in the hardware store because I didn't have a screwdriver with me to get it off. But this one's a 5/8 and it was 75 cents. And so I'm going to make sure the drag is backed off as far as possible. I guess that wouldn't really matter in this particular case based on the type of drag. But at any rate, let's just see if this one is going to fit. Going on kind of tight. By God, that's going to work. That's going to work. So, then I'm going to tighten down the, oh, guess what I forgot to do? Forgot to lubricate these pickup pin arms and pivot points. Work that in. All right, let's check the, okay, pins go in, wind it, pins come down, spinner head drops. Kind of hard to do to keep your fingers out of the way of that line break, but now I'll get the cover back on here, which goes on much better because the drain hole actually goes down to the bottom where it's supposed to, where it didn't when I started because it was so full of grit and sand and so on. But it's working correctly now. I want to make sure we check the anti-reverse, and it's working. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but you kind of got to move the drag adjustment, the star drag out of your way to access that, to turn that on and off. But you're not going to accidentally hit it while you're fishing, that's for sure. But anti-reverse override works fine. So, and it cleaned up really nicely. That was a farm fresh reel right there, but it cleaned up really nicely. So there you have the Zebco 802, the 1981 edition. The only 802 produced in the brown color, which I think is a really nice looking color, nice looking reel. I really like that. So if you like these fishing reel repair and service videos like I do, even though if I know how to work on a particular reel, I just like to see them brought back around. see them fixed up again. I don't know why. I find it oddly entertaining. So there's a couple other channels that I look at, and I especially like the ones that that focus or have a reasonable number of Spincast reels. I really have gotten into the Spincast reels. Brings back memories of my childhood. But one channel that does a lot of those, and others, and a lot of spinning reels too, is Young Martin's Reels. And for some reason, the gentleman's name is escaping me right now, but I'll leave. You can search Young Martin's Reels, and he does a lot of Spincast as well as spinning reels, and I enjoy watching that channel. So there are others out there, to some extent, The Great Outdoors, and if you're into bait casting especially, but also spinning, another really good one is that I go to when I do bait casters that I dare not try on my own, because that's not my thing, is Second Chance Tackle. Dennis over at Second Chance Tackle. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.